Coming up today on Your Sastastic Life, we are talking all things perimenopause and menopause with Maggie Livingston. Maggie is a women's health nurse practitioner at West Des Moines OBGYN and is Menopause Society practitioner certified and has worked as a nurse practitioner for 18 years. Buckle up. Here comes the sass.
Your Sastastic Life with hosts Trisha Rivas and Wendy Fredrigo.
Hello, everybody.
Top of the morning to you.
Welcome. It is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it is also Menopause Awareness Month.
Seriously, nothing like October coming in with a bang.
Yes.
It is. It's cooling down for all the hot flash ladies.
Oh, hallelujah.
Oh my gosh. Seriously, is this weather not like I feel like Snow White opening up the door and all of the animals come in because the weather's just beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. I opened the slider to let the dog out today and I just left it open.
You know? Yeah.
Oh,
It's gorgeous.
wonderful.
It feels nice.
Gorgeous, gorgeous.
Well, we're excited to have Maggie Livingston with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
What's
I should
next?
put lotion on my legs.
Yeah, you're looking a little dry. Is that one of the symptoms of menopause?
In fact,
Is
it is.
dryness on the leg.
Everything dries up. Yes.
Not only is the vagina dry, the legs are dry, the eyes are
It
dry.
can be skin changes, hair changes, dry eyes, all of that.
Seriously.
Yes.
Yes, I was going to say that. I know the list is long.
It's a
Yeah.
very long
So I
list.
think for the longest time, I thought it was hot flashes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hot
Brain
flashes, night
fog.
sweats, irritability, mood swings, brain fog, decreased libido. Depression, anxiety, hair, weight gain. That's a giant one. Dry skin, all of the lots of things.
Hair loss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
feeling that.
Yeah, we're
Yep.
going to have Maggie
We're going to do a little hair chat.
do a little hair chat.
But yeah,
That's fun.
the drop in estrogen causes many of those things to happen. So
Like this bald spot.
sometimes I can contribute. I've also got a little bit of a thinning right here too.
Yes.
That,
Yes.
Why can't the thinning happen back here where I never see it?
flat back there. It could go from there, but
No, why can't the thinning happen?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. That
She
was
just
nice.
pointed to her lower regions and her armpits for those of you who are not watching.
Yeah.
And then we get hair on our chins.
Yes, it's a
Oh.
redistribution of hair.
And
All
your
sorts of-
nipples.
Sometimes, yeah. Mhm.
I only get one right here.
Yep. A lot of random face hairs, neck
Yes.
hairs that people have to pluck off.
Yes.
So tell us, you started out as a nurse.
Yep. Yep. So
Tell
I
us
went
your
to
progression.
Mercy
Yeah.
nursing school and then started on the postpartum floor at Mercy, worked there for a few years. And my instructor was the OBGYN. Well, she was a nurse practitioner at one of the places in town. And so that sparked my interest to maybe go that path. It sounded very interesting. So I was a postpartum nurse, got my bachelor's degree, and then decided to go for my master's degree in women's health nurse practitioner, and that was through Nebraska. And I switched from the postpartum floor to then being a visiting nurse, going out into the community and doing visits for pregnant people, and then people that had just had their babies. Went to several high schools for the pregnant teens, which was so fun. One of my favorite things. Really got to see the community. It's usually a lower socioeconomic group that you're helping out there, but a lot of that kind of public health. So I was able to do that while I got my master's degree. And then when I got my master's degree and graduated, worked with Dr. Monroe at Central Iowa OBGYN for about 8 years, and then switched to my current position at West Des Moines OBGYN, and I've been there for about 10 years. And I got my menopause certification 10 years ago from the Menopause Society. So, and back when I was 38, I thought this will be handy. And whoa, is it ever handy now going through all this at 48? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Maggie, there's not a lot of people that know about menopause nor specialize it, especially in Des Moines.
Yeah, Des Moines doesn't have a ton of, certified people. Now, that doesn't mean that people aren't educated. Like all of our physicians
Yes.
and nurse practitioners have enough knowledge to, talk about it with people. But you're right. I mean, there's just not a lot of news and, education that's out there for people, or until recently there wasn't. So yeah, it's literally, I think it's me and one other physician that are menopause certified. Now that doesn't mean that you can't see many other wonderfully qualified healthcare people in the area, but that is kind of a desert really for, this large of an area. There's many people that are members of the Menopause Society, but they're not certified to have that. So I hope more people go for that certification and become more comfortable and, talk about it more with patients. But I do think that many people, or many providers, I should say, are like listening to their patients and they're educating themselves and they're more open to treatments and talking about it at visits. But I think there's still some practitioners who, bless their hearts, are just not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So they will send them my way, and that's totally fine. I'm happy with that because they obviously probably don't have a lot of time in their schedule to do like a well check and then talk about all the stuff that comes along with perimenopause and menopause. So a lot of I get referrals from other physicians, or just people in the community that, hey, they're like, hey, go to one of these, practitioners and they'll sit down and talk to you. So
yeah,
I hope more people will do that. And I think they will. So
yeah. Well, because the age demographic in Des Moines, especially.
Exactly.
I mean, that for 40 and up.
Oh, yeah.
So we do need definitely more resources, but Wendy and I refer people to you all the time.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I mean, and it's great because I think a lot of people think, the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause for many people kind of creep in where like they might start in their 40s and then they might think, oh, and weight gain is a whole separate thing. So we'll talk about that a little bit, but like maybe they're more anxious than they used to be on things that didn't used to make them anxious, or maybe they're just not sleeping quite like they used to sleep. And so they kind of sneak in. And then all of a sudden it seems like people turn to be about 40 to 44 to about 47. And they are like, what on earth is going on? Their periods start to change. That's a huge indicator that the hormones, the estrogen levels and the progesterone levels are changing so much, which affects many things. And so I think it kind of sneaks in on people, and maybe they were put on like an antidepressant, because that was what they thought they needed. And maybe it could have been helped with estrogen. It's hard saying for sure, but I think our age group, I feel like the Gen Xers are just not going to do it. Like they're
like, fuck this shit. Give me something. Help me out. I'm not going to just suffer.
A lot of my 40 to like 55, 57-year-olds are just like, no. Because they're trying to either get kids raised, they still have kids in the house, or maybe they're just trying to get them to be functioning members of society. And then sometimes they have parents who are starting to maybe decline in their health and they are kind of being pulled. And so there's not a lot left for these people at the end of the day for self-care, which is so important at this point. I mean, if we could give an extra hour a day to ourselves for self-care, we would probably be light years ahead, but we all, schedule ourselves to the hilt. It sounds like you guys have a crazy day today. So
yeah,
it's an interesting time in the world for sure.
I think one thing though that made me feel better is that, first of all, we should say you and I have been friends for over 30 years.
Yes.
You've helped me through many, many health things with my postpartum depression with Marley.
Yes.
Now menopause, and me being very standoffish about hormone replacement therapy. And you finally just saying to me, Trisha, I would never recommend something to you that I wouldn't take myself.
Yes.
Eased my anxiety about all of it. Truly it did.
Yeah.
Because, 10 years ago, all you heard about hormone therapy was cancer.
Yep. Oh,
cancer.
Yeah.
Cancer. It causes cancer. And so I just wanted to throw that out there that you really do your research.
Yeah.
And you listen to your patients and their needs and what their care looks like.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're right in thinking that. So the WHI study, which is a huge kind of driver as to why people kind of stopped talking about hormones many years ago, 2002, that came out, and everything was kind of flipped on its head as far as that goes. Now there's a lot of flaws. You can go back and do your own research on the WHI. But a lot of premature things were, talked about. Like the average age of people in that study was 63. It didn't represent what probably is a good population, if you will. So I think they have flipped back on that WHI study to say for many people, it's more about timing of hormones. You don't want to start hormones on somebody who has heart disease at 63 years old, but somebody who's perimenopausal or menopausal. There are so many benefits that if you start them in that opportunity, that time of window, within 10 years of menopause, you can have many benefits. Estrogen can be very beneficial. So can progesterone for a lot of things. And so there's more and more studies have been done. There's some really great books out there that really dig in if somebody wants to, deep dive into all of that stuff. The Mary Claire book is very good. The menopause, new menopause.
Yeah, that's what we're reading.
I just
read that.
Yeah, that one's
I have
excellent. Yeah,
finished
the Estrogen Matters is another one that I just finished this weekend. That actually is for more for breast cancer. So people that have a concern about breast cancer, maybe in their family history, a personal history, maybe they're a BRCA1 or 2 gene carrier, that deep dives into that. And actually, the physician who wrote it is an oncologist whose wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so he watched her suffer all these terrible menopause symptoms and deep dove into all of that. She used hormone therapy after she had breast cancer, which historically that's been a huge contraindication for people. And then was happy on it for 25 years, had great quality of life, had a small recurrence of the breast cancer. And at that time she decided to stop it. But it's a very good book. It's very comprehensive. So I do encourage people to read that one. But the WHI did a disservice overall.
WHI?
The Women's Health Initiative study that came out.
Okay.
So that was started in the 90s, and they were trying to prove that it was beneficial for heart health. And then it kind of got flipped on its, upside down. And then everybody was terrified from the results that came of that. And for breast cancer risk, they literally, one of the statistics you'll see is like for somebody not taking hormones, that population that doesn't take hormones, you're going to have 4 breast cancers per 1,000 women. And for people who take hormones, it goes up to 5 in 1,000. So they reported a 25% increase in breast cancer risk, but really that's a 0.08% increased risk if you look at the statistics. So bottom line is whenever you're looking at studies and things, it can all be flipped the way that you want it to be. And so I think a lot of people just need a deep dive if you're really curious about risks and things. And that's what you should do as a patient. You need to educate yourself about your own personal risks. What do you have? What's your family history? Like, do you feel like you're going to have a family history of this? Do you have diabetes? These are some things that you need to take into consideration. Heart disease, breast cancer, all of that. But
So what would be a case where you would not recommend someone do hormone replacement?
that is a great question because there are absolutely people that like the complete contraindication is anybody with a history of a blood clot, like a DVT in their leg or pulmonary embolism.
Okay.
Breast cancer risk is one, like we really try to pivot another direction right now in this current state. That book was very eye-opening for me personally, but we really have the oncologists recommend whether or not they go down that path. Now, there have been some patients I have a patient who has the BRCA2 gene, but has never had breast cancer. She's had all of her breast tissue removed. And so she actually wants to do hormones. And so technically she can. So, but the blood clot history is just like, oof, you've already had a blood clot, which, you survived. If we give you estrogen makes your blood stick together and form clots. And so if we do that, we have to proceed very cautiously or probably not at all. Now, the nice part is there's a medication for hot flashes called Veozah that's come out that's non-hormonal. And hot flashes and night sweats are definitely the number one symptom that brings people in because it's very disruptive to everybody's life, right? Like you can't sleep at night because you're hot and you're at work and you're having hot flashes, your face is red, you're sweating, you might even have to change your clothes. And so that Veozah medication is non-hormonal, specifically designed for hot flashes and night sweats. And we are seeing very good results with it. So it is a great option for people. Only it's the downside to that right now, insurances are not covering it super well, but they do have a savings program for a lot of patients. So my patients that use it and love it, they can usually get it for a reasonable price, about $30 or $40 a month. And there is some lab work that has to be done before we start it. And then while we first start somebody on there, just watching liver and kidney function. So, but that one is kind of a game changer. So like I have a patient who has had a pulmonary embolism from birth control pills is what they thought. So probably not super smart to go down the hormone path. So we're going to just pivot and do something else.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think next question. Why is it that in perimenopause you get super, super, super heavy periods?
That's a great question. So a lot of times one of the first symptoms that happens with patients, and these are patients who are not using any birth control, because if you're using birth control pills or Mirena or something like that, we're basically kind of taking care of your periods for you. So we oftentimes see this in patients who are not using that. And so your hormone levels just start to fluctuate quite a bit and you may skip a period or you'll go a couple months without, and then you'll have 2 periods in 1 month and they are heavy. They come in and they're very heavy. I often say, is it like a crime scene period? And they are just like, yes. And where it's just like, I just don't get it. I bled through my clothes, and those are due to hormonal regulations, but we also can't poo-poo it. So a lot of times what we do for somebody like that is we recommend a birth control pill to kind of control those cycles. A Mirena IUD is actually indicated for the treatment of dysfunctional uterine bleeding in this this time frame. And so, and that actually will help with them in the long term, because a lot of times those will, many people will, like 50% of people will stop having periods altogether with that. And they don't mind that usually at all. So, but it's just those hormonal fluctuations. But we do have to, a lot of times, do an ultrasound, make sure that there isn't any other pathologic reason why their periods are getting heavy. You want to rule out any type of cancer, that type of thing. But it's usually just related to those hormones just kind of starting to shut down. And so they're all over the place. You know, you'll have somebody who has breast tenderness from out of nowhere, and then it resolves. And so it just is a kind of a chaotic time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference between the estrogen and the progesterone?
Progesterone? Yeah. So if you have a uterus, you have to use progesterone. We cannot just give you estrogen. Estrogen is probably the one that most people have heard about, that type of thing. And it's our friend, right?
Yeah.
It helps with hot flashes, night sweats, all of those symptoms. Progesterone can also help with mood and sleep and things like that. But they started treating women with estrogen and progesterone years ago. And what they found is that if they just give women estrogen all by himself, it's increased risk of endometrial cancer. So by giving you progesterone, you offset that. So if you did not have your uterus, you do not have to have progesterone, but it can also be beneficial for sleep in a lot of people. So sometimes I will still use that, even because a lot of people, sleep is a big factor. Wendy and I were chatting about that earlier. I mean, it disrupts everything. But yeah, so estrogen helps with like hot flashes, night sweats. It helps with bleeding if somebody's having those really erratic periods. You know, we have estrogen receptors all over our bodies, our joints. So a lot of people have joint pain. And so that can help with all of that. There's estrogen receptors in our brain. So,
Wendy and I have talked about this before. I mean, hundreds of years ago, thinking of the women that committed suicide because of this, or were put in a psychiatric ward, or I mean, and that was not uncommon. Am I correct?
Well, you know, the lifespan of people has increased in the last 100 years, right? So probably many, many years ago, women didn't live that long, and maybe they died before they went through this horrible menopause transition. So, but you're not wrong in thinking that. I mean, I've had patients come in and say, sometimes I wonder if I would have been treated had I not gotten a divorce. And you think, oh, you know, that's kind of sad, because they, you know, we get crabby. If you're not sleeping well, if you're having hot flashes, if you just don't feel yourself, you get crabby. And we treat our people around that we love the most, we treat them kind of poorly sometimes, which is, you know, horrible. But it's just, you're not wrong in thinking that as far as that goes.
Well, and I definitely don't handle situations the way that I used to.
Yes.
You know, so then it's kind of, I think to myself, well, am I too busy?
Yeah.
Or do I have too much going on? Or is it my menopause? Or, I mean, it is just a mind fuck.
Oh, well, I think that a global, like a common conversation with my patients is, like we talked about, tolerance is like very poor for things. You know, like if I get thrown a curveball, something random in my day that upsets me, I know I will be on Mach 10 for an hour, and I have zero ability to walk myself through that. But then I just try not to do anything for an hour. And then I usually realize it's not the end of the world. You know, I'm not going to die, or this isn't going to happen, or whatever. But I know that. And so I have no control over it. That's what's interesting for me. And I usually am a pretty level-headed person. But boy, I tell you what, the tolerance for just, you know, things you're not expecting, or just upsetting things, you know, I just don't have the ability to self-talk like I used to.
No.
So I think that's a common complaint. Another common talk that we have as patients, they're like, this is what they say all the time. You know, I don't think I'm depressed, but I don't want to do anything. And I'm like, and they'll literally say, and I totally know what they're saying. They'll go, I just want to come home from work, and I just want to sit there. I don't want to do anything.
Yes.
But I don't think I'm depressed. and I'm like, my God, same. But, I don't have any get up and go. And I'm like, and that's sad, right? And so I'm like, that is a very common conversation that we have. And I'm like, I get it. And then fatigue. I think people are tired, which that's multifaceted as well. You know, I mean, I always feel bad when I'm like, I know I'm tired too, but we draw labs because you want to rule out any blatant reason why they're, you know, maybe they're anemic or something like that, or the thyroid's off. But menopause and perimenopause can be exhausting. And that is one of the symptoms, is overwhelming fatigue. You know, and I think a lot of people just think I have something wrong with me. I mean, I think the pandemic kind of did a number on us as far as like everybody goes worst case scenario immediately, right? And so I'm probably dying because I have this fatigue, you know, and that's, a lot of people will say that.
Yeah. I've had a couple clients, though, one in particular where she just she felt like this doomsday every day. And then she finally did go in and get labs drawn. And I mean, she basically was depleted of everything,
Yeah.
right down to vitamin D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, she suffered for about a year and a half and just was not the same person that I had
Too
met.
bad.
And it was just, it broke my heart, but she's on a new health journey and is,
Yeah.
slowly making her way back.
Yeah.
But she said every day felt like a doomsday to me.
Yeah.
Vitamin D is huge. I didn't realize how huge it was. And I want you to explain this to me. But vitamin D is not actually a vitamin, right? Isn't it kind of like a hormone?
Kind of,
Or
yeah.
it behaves like a hormone?
Yeah, vitamin D is very important for like just immunity, mood, bone health, all sorts of things that way. But yeah, if I can remember to take it, right? Because that's another thing, brain fog and perimenopause and menopause. But yes, it can definitely help with that for sure.
Well, my vitamin D was super low. And so I actually started getting injections.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how good I felt. And I think what happens is we start having these changes and we take it on personally. So I was super tired all the time. And so I'm like, oh, it's because I'm getting older. Oh, it's because I'm overweight. Oh, it's because I'm not exercising. I like blamed myself for why I felt tired.
Yeah.
So I get these vitamin D injections and I'm like, woo, like all of a sudden I had this energy and I felt great.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times I hate that we start to shame and blame ourselves for feeling bad when there's an actual reason.
And there's things you can do to help.
And there's things you can do to help. So we don't have to suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do think we should be able to retire at 50 though.
Well,
I really do.
Nice.
Why don't you work on that? We'll see how that
I mean, I do.
Yeah.
I do. I think that 50 is it. And then the rest of the years after that is just,
just frosting on the cake.
Seriously, you've done your part. You've done your part. I've worked since I was 12.
Right?
Yeah.
So tell us why do women get more
abdominal fat
during
yeah.
So yes, and so weight gain, I have a lot of patients come my way for that, which I am not a weight loss expert by all stretch of the imagination. But in menopause, the hormone levels that change, our estrogen levels drop, which predisposes us to have gain abdominal fat. So I have a lot of not young people, I should say, but just healthy people who literally you can tell have taken care of themselves their entire life. I honestly am not one of those people. I have, waxed and waned in my health, whatever. But these people, you can just tell they're runners, they eat healthy, and they get so frustrated because they have this abdominal pooch that pops up, which is related to those estrogen levels that can change and that. So I don't have a magic fix for that. But if they want to do hormones will not make them gain weight. People that use hormones typically have less abdominal fat than people that don't. But there is a piece of an aging process that we have to at least account for. And what we have to do is increase our protein and we have to strength train. And I think you're kind of in that journey, aren't you, Wendy?
Yes.
Strength training is so important because as we get older, we lose bone, we lose muscle. And so bone mass, I should say, and muscle. And so we have to fight it. And it just depends on how hard you want to fight it. And in our minds, we shouldn't have to fight it, right? Because we're only 27 because we're Gen Xers, but we're not.
Forever 29.
Yep. That's what my license plate says. But yeah, it's one of the most frustrating things. And these are people, like I said, most of them are ones who are truly eating healthy. I mean, all of us have probably a long way we can go before we really, we can definitely improve our nutrition and our exercise routine and add weights and things like that. But I think the most frustrating thing is these people that come in and they've really been a self-advocate and care person their entire life. And then all of a sudden they're 10 pounds heavier in their tummy. And that is really tricky, because I mean, it's those changes that occur and hormone therapy can help with that, but it's not going to make you drop 10 pounds. That's for sure. So,
yeah. So, walk us through a little bit of the hair loss and thinning hair and
yeah. And it's tricky because it's part of again, the aging process, right? Our hormone levels change. So I have had some patients that have used the hormone therapy that feel like their hair has gotten better. But there are treatments for thinning hair. We don't prescribe them in our office, but a dermatology place can.
Yes.
But the texture change that people notice, because a lot of times you're starting to get gray hairs, right? And as Trisha can tell us, that has a totally different texture a lot of times. So you're getting the gray hair. That's probably coarser, I would imagine. And sometimes you'll have the thinning through the crown, and then you'll have because there's this change from estrogen to androgen levels. And so you'll have almost some hair growth, some random hair growth there. And like that male pattern baldness will sometimes happen as well. So that it can be very frustrating, you know, and I've know people have talked about doing like biotin and collagen and all these things. I'm not sure exactly what that helps with. Estrogen therapy can definitely help with hair loss, but sometimes it is just unfortunately part of the aging process, you know? I mean, none of us like it. So yeah. But like we'll start to get a random like gray hair that will just pop, you know, and then that's coarse and weird. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I have fine hair, so I'm excited to have gray, coarse hair.
Yeah, fine hair.
Mine is so fine,
Yeah.
thin.
But even the eyebrows and the eyelashes, and you know what I mean? Bless my mom's heart. I've finally colored her brows for the very first time. And it made such a huge difference because she's like, I have no more eyebrows. You know what I mean?
You probably see that with patients.
Oh
or
my
with
gosh,
people that-
yes. All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And that's why I had reached out to you, because that is primarily our age demographic at Trixie's. And we are hearing a lot about it. And we heard a lot about it after COVID.
Yes.
I mean, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like a double whammy for those of us in that age group, truly.
Well, you lost a lot of your hair.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes.
Do you feel like it's come back?
I do. Yep, I do. But now I feel like it's
menopause. Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to educate our clients on things that they can do.
Yeah, exactly.
For themselves. Self-care.
Self-care. So important.
Self-care.
So important.
And what that looks like for them. So talk to us about eating.
Yeah.
The higher protein.
Yes.
You know, what does that look like? How often should someone be weight training, and how long for the day?
You know, it kind of just depends on your goals. I mean, obviously there's some people who are just going to ride the aging process out and do whatever comes their way. But if you're one of these people who wants to fight it and keep their bones nice and strong, it seems like you're going to have to strength train 2 to 3 times a week, depending on if you're trying to build or maintain. I think the building is going to be 3 times and the maintenance is twice. I'm not an expert in that at all, but protein I think is huge. It's kind of taken the back seat over the years, right? To talk about carbohydrates and fat, but protein is so important. And many of the symptoms like fatigue and that, if you just add some protein, I think that helps a lot of times with your energy level. I think, you know, you hear anyway from half of your body weight in grams, right? I just read the other day, you should eat in grams what your goal weight is. And I thought, good Lord, for me, that's a lot.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot of protein. So that can be tricky, and just educating yourself on what's good protein, because not all protein's, you know, the same. Animal protein, your meat and that type of thing. Sorry to all the vegans out there, but you know, your beef, your pork, your chicken, that's going to be a really dense quality protein versus some of these other types of proteins that you can do. Wendy, have you increased your protein?
Oh yeah.
Was it hard at first? Because I feel like it would be very challenging.
Very hard.
Yeah.
I think before I was lucky if I was getting 60 grams of protein a day, and now I do between 120 and 130.
Yes.
And I would say that aside from the progesterone to help me sleep, that was probably the biggest game changer.
The protein.
It's like, no wonder I was tired. I wasn't getting enough protein. When I'm eating that much protein, I don't crave sugar.
Yeah.
And I'm full. And so, but it's a lot of work. I feel like
a lot of planning.
It's a lot of planning. You just have to really plan. But it's been a game changer, and it's allowed me to still gain muscle while I've been losing fat,
which is huge.
But I've only been weight training twice a week.
Yeah.
But I think if I really want to pack on some more, I might have to do 3.
Well, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert. There are far more qualified people but that's the gist of what I see. And I think the lifting to fatigue is a huge thing now, right?
Yes.
And just it's so important for people to keep their muscles and keep their bones nice and strong.
Yep.
You know, I see these awesome transformations on like not Snapchat, but like Instagram and Facebook of these older women who are grandmas, and then they start lifting weights, and I'm like, oh,
it's amazing.
Yes. I mean, their whole posture changes. They carry themselves, and they're just protecting themselves from falls, you know, and increasing your muscle mass. You're just going to be sharper in general, like brain wise and everything, because you're eating so much protein. So I think that's a huge piece of it. And I think, again, like most of us can improve our diet to some degree, but protein can be hard to chase down. You know, when you're trying to get to a certain 100 and some grams of protein a day, that is like, wow, I'm really going to have to the average diet, like you said, probably has like less than 60 grams per day.
Yeah. And I feel like it helps with brain fog, having more protein.
Yeah.
I don't feel as foggy. So tell us a little bit more about the brain fog thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because mean, is that just a natural progression of age that obviously your brain's not going to be as sharp, but like at what point should you be worried?
Right. I know. Well, that's a common, thing that we talked about. I think in our group chat a couple of years ago, somebody shot out, I think I have dementia, you guys. And I was like, no.
It's probably Laura.
It probably was Laura. Just have a chocolate martini, Laura. It'll be fine.
Yes, exactly.
And I was like, no, I mean, I literally, everybody that like almost all my menopause people that come in and chat with me have this brain fog. And it is those drop in estrogen levels and the chaos that's going on. And most of the time it rebounds after you kind of go through that menopause transition, but hormone therapy can definitely help with that. I mean, I've seen it. It's not indicated for brain fog, but definitely what I've seen, it helps tremendously. I had a gal who started hormones, came back for her 3-month follow-up, and she said, I finally got my brain back and now I'm going to go get my PhD. And I was like, wow, I'm like, that's awesome. But it's also, you got to read. And I think, brain fog, we've got so much going on. You've got you've got a ton of things going on. Everybody does. You've got a ton of things going on. And so I think we're easily distracted, very hard to concentrate. I was just talking to a mental health professional who told me that everybody she sees thinks they have ADD, which again, I think some people probably do because they can't focus or, anything like that. But hormone therapy can help with brain fog. There's also other supplements, that like people will sometimes use lion's mane, things like that. Not that I'm endorsing that. I do take that, but I'm not like telling people to take that. And sometimes that can help kind of perk things up. But you want to definitely do your research if you're doing any type of supplement just to make sure. But vitamin D, that can also help with that. The protein. I mean, they're all little tiny changes. You wouldn't want to do them all at once because you'd be overwhelmed. So just, step by step kind of go through that way. But it is overwhelming and it scares people to death. Plus, I think on top of that, the pandemic scared the crap out of people as far as just brain health in general. I had so many patients, not even menopause related, come in and say they just weren't as sharp as they were after having had COVID. So especially people who had suffered from COVID had the brain fog, like I'm forgetting what I was doing in the middle of while I was doing it. And I was just like, but that is disturbing. And you do think, okay, am I going to go down this cognitive decline and that type of thing? And it's important that you read books, keep the brain going. I think many of us are guilty of, spending hours on our phones, just, scrolling through stuff. We probably need to put our phone down and do something a little.
I've always wondered, does that count as reading? Because I don't think that our brain comprehends it the same on a screen as it does.
I would say, I don't know for sure, but I would say no for that. I think the page turning, without that constant stimulation of a picture where you're imagining you're using your brain, that type of thing, brain games, crossword puzzles, things like that can definitely help. But brain fog is one of the most disturbing things people come see me for. And most of them do feel better. Sometimes they come back in 3 months and they're like, I feel like I'm better, but I want to go up a little bit more in my estrogen. And that's totally fine because there's, a lot of different levels to the estrogen that we can do. So,
So I'm going to be 51 in a few days here.
Yay. Happy birthday.
If someone starts HRT, like, at what point would I stop taking it? Like, how long can I take it?
That's a great question. If you continue to stay healthy and you can keep kicking that can down the road for now. I mean, generally, when you look out into the literature previously, it was 5 years or less, but we know that hormone therapy use for long periods of time can be beneficial, right? It can cause a lot of wonderful things. It can help protect your bones, decrease cardiovascular risk, that type of thing. Estrogen increases blood flow to the heart. It can decrease the buildup of potential plaques that develop in the coronary artery disease. So, as long as you stay healthy, you probably can take it for a while. We're moving that needle farther and farther back. Years ago, it was like 5 years or less. Now, there may come a point where, we have to reevaluate, if your health changes or you have some sort of health scare or some sort of something that you're diagnosed with. But if you're doing well with it and you're not developing any issues, then usually you can continue to take that.
So,
but it just depends. It's hormone therapy and menopause should be so individually based that, it's not just a one size fits all. So,
so let's say it comes to the point that I do get off of it when I'm 65. I want to make sure that people know, like, you don't just stop taking it, right? So how do people?
A lot of people wean down like the dose of their estrogen. So like if I have an older gal who's ready to come off of it or needs to come off of it, we will just decrease her dosage for that. And so it is kind of like you wouldn't want to stop it abruptly. You could, but your symptoms might come back with the fear, vengeance type of thing.
Yeah.
But you would just probably want to wean down. So, I mean, there are situations where patients have to stop it abruptly. Sometimes if you're getting ready to have a surgery where you're going to be immobilized and then that's increasing your blood clot risk, you would have to stop it abruptly type of thing. So like if I have somebody who's getting ready to have like their knee replaced or a hip surgery or something where they're not going to be as active, and so they're kind of increasing their risk for blood clots, we're going to have them stop their hormones while they're doing that. And usually that's 2 or 3 months. I do actually have a patient that's getting ready to do that. So, so those are some situations you just want to be aware of, but you don't always have that. You might fall, right? And then you need surgery. And so you would have to stop it abruptly.
Okay.
And that wouldn't be a fun, probably couple of days for you, but you'd get through it, and then we could get you back up started. So,
well, the progesterone really does help with sleep.
Yeah.
Is that something that, like, even if a woman stops taking estrogen, that they continue taking progesterone, or do you have to?
I mean, you could. Yeah, you could theoretically. So the WHI, and again, there was a lot of, confusing facts on that when they came out. But what they did show that the breast cancer risk was decreased with estrogen alone. And then with the progesterone and estrogen together, it was slightly increased risk that way. But again, when you look at the statistics, it is such a tiny increased risk that I wouldn't let that sway you either way, especially since you're getting such a good benefit of sleep from that. Right. And the WHI, or the Women's Health Initiative, looked at Prempro, which is Premarin, and Prevera. So those are some other things too, which is totally a different thing. But again, when we talk about sleep, if your sleep quality is good and it's helping you and you're able to get up and feel energetic and all that, I feel like you have to flip it back to quality of life. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? Like when people come in to see me, I'm having this, this, and this. Well, is it interfering with your quality of life? And they're like, yes. Okay, let's talk about hormones. But if I have just a regular yearly coming in and they're like, oh yeah, I might have a hot flash or two, or maybe I have this. And I'm like, well, is it interfering with your quality of life? Oh no, I can manage it. All right, then you continue to manage it how you're doing it. At this point, you don't really need estrogen at this point.
So Maggie, tell us about, I keep on hearing about the pellets.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is that something that...
I have some patients who use the pellets. We do not do that at my practice that we do. And that is considered more like bioidentical, and they tweak their dosages of hormone based on like lab results, which is good.
Okay.
That is not, in my world, that's different, but what it's typically placed is they do a small pellet. I believe it's about as big as a grain of rice or maybe smaller, that contains estrogen and testosterone. And then they have someone take progesterone at bedtime. That's usually how that's the average person. And this is me having a conversation with my patients that use it, because I do have patients that use it, and most of them love it. The problem is that when they start having bleeding, vaginal bleeding, uterine bleeding, then they're sent to us for evaluation of that. And then sometimes these poor people come in and their testosterone levels are through the roof. So they're like 200 and 300 for a female, which is really high. And a lot of bad things can happen when that occurs. A lot of people will literally grow hair on their chin. Their hair will, talk about changes in your hair. And then there can be the irreversible side effect of voice deepening, their voice will deepen and you can't get that back. That is permanent. So... And this is what we've seen in our clinic. There's probably people that are using it that are happy, but we can't endorse that just because those levels can change so much. Yeah. And they are pumping people full of like testosterone, which is going to make you feel good. Because it kind of spurs energy in that. It's just for women, we're not meant to have super high testosterone levels. We're men perhaps, and then that's something that you may have to use the rest of your life. Plus it's very expensive. The pellet therapy that people do. I think it's anywhere between like $200 to $500 a month. So, I don't, in this day and age, I don't know. But there are people that they love it. They feel amazing on it, but they're sent to us when then they have the trouble, right? So,
gotcha.
But it came about probably because the WHI came out, and people were hesitant to use like hormones. Yep. And so they wanted something more natural, bioidentical, those type of things. And that's where that was spurred. And there's also a whole bioidentical, like compounded creams and things like that some people will use as well. And that is a space for people who cannot tolerate the FDA approved prescriptions, like, that we would send in for you, like a patch and things like that. There are people who legitimately cannot tolerate it for some reason. Maybe they don't absorb it, things like that. That is not a bad path to go down, but you kind of want to rule out all these other well-studied, well-monitored, proven things versus going down some compounded path. Now we have some great compounding pharmacies in town. Yeah. So we do use a compounded pharmacy for like our compounded testosterone for people that we do when they want to do that. So, but that is kind of a slippery slope, that biote thing, because I have patients who do well. But it's not something that we would endorse just because we see these people coming in with these super high testosterone levels.
Yeah.
And then when they're coming down off of that, they're not feeling super great because, they were just like, I had one lady who's like, I love how I feel. I got so much energy, but I'm kind of ragey. And I'm just like, well,
Oh, shit.
let's bring you down. So, but
Well, Wendy and I hit a whole new level over the weekend as I'm taking my HRT, and she's putting her cream on her leg, and we're just talking amongst ourselves.
The night, yeah, we were traveling and doing our nighttime hormone therapy.
Exactly. And then, I literally looked over at
Here
her
we
and I
are.
thought,
Next
"Oh,
level.
next level.
Next level
Can't even
friendship.
imagine what we're going to be like in our
Oh.
70s."
Yeah.
So speaking of that, one of the things that happens during perimenopause, menopause is the vaginal dryness
Oh,
Yes.
the dry
Yes.
vagina.
Let's
and the
talk about it.
painful sex.
Yep.
And so there is the estradiol
Yeah.
tablet that
That's
goes in vaginally. So I would love for you to talk
Yep.
about that because
Mhm.
that has
Yes.
been a game changer as well.
Yes. And so vaginal estrogen actually does not have the risks that like hormone replacement
Yeah.
therapy does. It is considered localized. So localized would be just right in the vagina. Vaginal or the hormone therapy is systemic. So you're going to have your whole body's going to feel the systemic effects, which we want for certain things, right? But the vaginal is localized. So it's very, very safe. So there's different forms of that. And so literally I wish everybody could use vaginal estrogen, and almost everybody should. I've had breast cancer survivors whose oncologists are fine with them. Even people who've had blood clots can use vaginal estrogen just because it does not increase your serum levels to a noticeable amount.
Yeah.
But there are creams, tablets, there's rings, there's suppositories. They all work beautifully. Sometimes we see the cream kind of can get your symptoms under control quicker because it covers the inside of the vagina, coats the tissue. And then some people will switch to a tablet for a maintenance dose just
Sure.
so it's less messy and that type of thing. But it can be an absolute game changer for painful intercourse, dryness. A lot of times people just have like, I just feel like I'm just kind of, like you feel like you have a UTI, but I don't. But it's just kind of that uncomfortable
Sandpaper.
sensation. Yeah. And we're seeing that a lot of people who suffer from chronic UTIs, when we put vaginal estrogen in, it's so close to the urethra and bladder that it can really help keep that tissue healthy.
Oh.
Yeah. And kind of decrease the frequency of UTIs. So literally I wish vaginal estrogen for everybody. It's just one of the fastest, easiest things that you can do. And there's different formulations. There's actually a 3-month vaginal ring that is about 2 hair ties basically thick, and you insert it vaginally and you leave it in for 3 months. It is glorious for my older ladies who need help with that. It's not covered very well by insurance, but maybe with more people, sending in prescriptions, we'll get better coverage. But vaginal estrogen is very safe.
Yeah.
And it helps tremendously. And you can use vaginal estrogen and also hormone therapy at the same time.
Yep.
Mhm.
So a lot of people feel so much better when they're doing that. So
Yeah. Don't even get me started on the health insurance shit when it comes to
coverage.
and advocating for our health, which I know you are huge cheerleader for advocating for your own health.
Yes.
I mean,
Mhm.
you do an amazing job at that. But yeah, I mean, some of the stories that my clients have talked about with things not being covered under their health insurance, and it just pisses me off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do a lot of prior auths for
I
people,
know you do.
which is fine.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing those, but it's amazing to me.
Shouldn't be that hard.
No, I mean, I had a gal who we tried to get Prempro, which has been around forever. And for some reason, her insurance just wouldn't cover it. And so we had to write letters, and then they want you to fail on all these, other types of medications before they'll cover it. And then sometimes they eventually do cover it, but it's not easy because it's a lot of letter writing, faxing, sometimes phone calls, things like that. So, but we have to advocate for ourselves, and
We do.
yeah. The Veozah one, the non-hormonal hot flash treatment, that usually the prior auth, they may or may not cover that. And then a lot of times they'll say, well, no, it's not covered under their plan, but they do have the savings program. So that's kind of nice. But that is a game changer for a lot of people that are having just primarily the symptoms of hot flashes and night sweats. That's a game changer for that.
And say the name again one more time.
Veozah. It's
Veozah?
Veozah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've seen primary cares. We're OBGYN, right? So we're going to see a lot of hot, flashy people, but I've seen some primary cares prescribing it, and they're doing well with it too. So
Good.
yeah, it's getting the word out. It was one of the commercials on the Super Bowl. So I suppose it's making its name.
Yes. Yes. What would be your 3 top books to recommend
Oh, yeah.
to educate people
if they're just wanting to dabble in deep dive. So definitely the new menopause is probably the most.
That is fantastic.
Yes. And a lot of people are listening to it because they're not big readers.
Yep.
So the new menopause is very comprehensive. Mary Claire is, for everything that I've seen on social media and in her books, is an advocate for women and wanting people to feel good. She was an OBGYN, you know, for years, and then shifted to menopause recently in the last like 5 to 7 years, I believe. But anything she has on her social media, she's always putting the study results out for like vitamin D, weighted vests, which that's a huge thing coming out for, you know, helping keep your bones.
I love my weighted vest.
Yep.
I do.
Yep. The new menopause is a great one. And then one that's kind of funny, but also written by a physician, the Menopause Manifesto. That's Jen Gunter. Those are very similar.
Okay.
That's kind of funny. There's so many other ones. I've had patients tell me to read certain books as well, because there's so many books about menopause out there. But I just read that one this weekend called Estrogen Matters. And I don't have the name of the physician off the top of my head, but it was written by an oncologist and then a PhD. So I apologize that I don't have the number, but that one is fascinating about the benefits of estrogen, in particular to breast cancer. So, and like, again, his wife was a breast cancer survivor, and then his daughter actually got breast cancer. He talks about this in the book. And she was like, Dad, what do you think? Should I do hormones? And she ended up doing hormones. So, yeah, very, explains everything. Very eye-opening for me, because I think it takes a long time for people to change their minds when a study comes out, like the WHI. It takes a really long time. I mean, we're 22 years later. And I feel like just in the last couple of years have come to a head with menopause. I mean, I've seen more menopause consults in the last year than I have in the last 9 before that. So,
well, yeah, because that's we refer everybody to.
Yes.
I literally just referred someone to you last Friday. Well, and because her friend was going to you.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I get a lot of friend referrals, which is great. I wish I could tell you that when somebody comes in and they say their friend's name, I would know them off the top of my head. I don't. I mean, I can like sometimes remember. It just depends on conversations and things like that. But no, I do a lot of menopause consults, which is rewarding. One of my favorite appointments is to have that 3-month follow-up and have somebody come in and say, I feel so much better. You know, I feel so much better. Or, hey, I'm feeling good, but can we increase my estrogen a little bit? Or can we increase my progesterone a little bit? You know, because you don't want to like throw a whole bunch of hormones at you. Because if you're menopausal, truly menopausal, and you haven't had a period for a while, you don't want to just throw a bunch of estrogen at somebody, because it's going to take a minute for their body to adjust. You know, somebody that's more closer, like they're still having periods, they can probably tolerate a higher dosage because their estrogen levels are, you know, still kind of fluctuating. Now back to checking hormone levels. So that's kind of a big hot topic.
Yes.
And when they're doing like the pellets and stuff, they check, that's a whole nother thing, but they do check those regularly. When I start someone on hormone therapy, you don't have to check. Like if someone's menopausal and they're coming to me, they haven't had a period for over a year, they're having all these symptoms, it's not absolutely necessary to check hormone levels on people, because we know you're menopausal. Now, if we weren't sure, like maybe somebody's really young and we're like, oh, is this menopause or is this something else? We would do a whole different workup. But we can check levels, but you don't have to. So I think that's kind of something that people like, oh, I want to know where my levels are at. Well, if you're having all these symptoms, your estrogen's going to be low. I mean, I can tell you that. And we can check it. Like, I think we checked yours and it was like non-existent. And I was like, Trisha, you have 0 estrogen.
No wonder I feel like shit.
Right.
But we can, because a lot of people say, yes, I want to see where I'm starting. And then sometimes we recheck levels, but I do not dial people in based on lab results. We dial them in based on how they're feeling. So that's kind of where the whole, like, we don't have to check levels, but we can. Now, if you're doing testosterone therapy with people, you have to check levels, because you do not want to have somebody go super high on testosterone. So, and testosterone, we don't do that initially with people. But many times people come to us and one of their biggest problems is, I have no libido. And a common thing that people will say, we have these common things, these threads. I don't know if I don't care if I ever have sex again. And they're like, and I'm fine with that, but my husband's not. I mean, and that's literally almost verbatim what people will say. And they're like, so I feel like I should address that. And they're like, no, nothing. And I was just like, okay, so let's start you off on some hormones first. And then when you come back, if that hasn't improved, because I've seen it improve enough with just doing some estrogen and progesterone, a lot of times people go, man, I actually think about it now, you know, so they're making some progress. But if it's still just bottom of the barrel, we'll check some testosterone levels on people, and then we do testosterone cream. But we proceed very slowly with that because of the side effects and that type of thing. And that's also something that if you did it for 4 to 6 months and you noticed 0 improvement in any type of sex drive, then there'd be no reason to continue it. And you may want to go down a different path as far as that goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of like the hormone levels and that type of thing. So.
Yeah.
The joys.
I know.
a joy.
But, everybody at the end of the day, everybody just wants to feel better and to be their best self. And it's really hard right now, I think.
It is. We're lucky as girlfriends, though, that we have you and Laura.
Yeah.
Because they're both
Do
nurses.
you guys ever, you're talking about your girl trip.
Yeah.
Is your whole trip spent with questions? Are you ever listen, I don't have my doctor hat on today. Leave me alone.
No, because we just text.
No. Yes. No, I think this is kind of funny. Kelly, who will listen to this, hi Kelly, is probably one of the healthiest people I've ever met in my life. Has nothing wrong with her, which is fantastic. Gets a migraine, which could be debilitating, but otherwise, And so she just never takes medicine. She's just as healthy as can be. Laura and I are grabbing all the things because we know all the stuff. And she's like, hey, I got that book, The New Menopause. I've been listening to it. And she was like, I'm really interested in it. This was just the other day. And I was like, yes. Do you have questions? And she was like, yes. And so, we were talking about it. It's going to be a fun little chat, I think, this weekend about menopause.
I know. I can't wait. We're doing a photo shoot, too.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
A witchy photo shoot downtown.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fun.
But yeah.
It'll be.
But those are probably the books that I would recommend.
Okay. What about vitamins?
So I do omega-3s are important for heart health. Vitamin D is huge. I do collagen. I know I do collagen in my coffee, and that actually gets me a little protein. I think I get 19 grams. So that helpful,
nice.
A collagen probiotic. It just kind of depends on what stuff you have. I'm concerned about my heart health. So I do CoQ10. I do glucosamine for my joints. Try to think of what else. I do a little magnesium. That's supposed to help. I do magnesium glycinate at bedtime.
I do too.
And that helps, I think, tremendously with I think overall when I don't take it, I don't feel quite level-headed, and then with bed sleep too. So the magnesium and the progesterone can help tremendously with that.
Yeah, you recommend the magnesium to me.
I think if anything, people struggle with sleep and they're not really thinking they want to do hormones, just add some magnesium and see if that will get you some coverage on your sleep.
Now the magnesium, there's the Calm powder, but that's magnesium citrate. Is that
right? I prefer the glycinate for sleep.
Okay.
But Calm can definitely help people feel more relaxed. The citrate can have a little loosening of the bowels type of thing, which if you run a little firmer, then that might help. But some people just swear by the Calm, but I just do the magnesium glycinate at bedtime and that seems to help.
How many milligrams do you recommend?
300 to 400 probably.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's probably it. Yeah, and I don't do a calcium supplement. I just do vitamin D. I feel like I probably get calcium through my.
Do you do a pill or a liquid
for what?
Vitamin D.
A little capsule.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because again, you hear different things on that too.
Oh, I know. Yeah, they're exactly.
Or injections.
I think with the vitamin D liquid. I have my little pill case.
Yeah.
Now I'm happy to say that my little pill case is filled with supplements. It's not prescription.
So is mine. Yeah. I mean, they're busting at the seams.
Right. But I think since when I had the liquid vitamin D, since it wasn't in my little pill pack, I would always forget.
Yeah. It has to be where you can remember it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it doesn't help you if you don't take it. So switch to the capsules.
Yes. But yeah, those are probably the biggest things. There's been some talk of creatine for muscle health and that. I don't know much about that, so I can't speak on that. But Mary Claire talks about it in her book. If somebody wants to dig into that, I think that's supposed to help with just muscle strength when you're working out, brain health, things like that. But I can't speak any more about that.
Mateo takes that.
I started some creatine for a while. But I know you have to be super careful and drink a crap ton of water.
Yes, that's also a thing. And then if you don't, that's not good. So
because it helps hold water in your muscles. And I'm not always good at that, but it's another thing. Drinking
another
self-care
water thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. From February to just a few weeks ago, my estrogen went from 28 to 5.
That's right.
So I think that means that I'm probably done, hopefully.
Probably, yeah.
The clock resets, right? Because it has to be a full year that you haven't had a period.
Well, and when you're on hormones, you could have a bleeding episode and that wouldn't be considered a period. So it gets a little tricky.
Oh, so how do you know if it's a period or just...
You don't really. It can be a little challenging because that is a good point. So if somebody's gone a full year, it's been a year since they've had a period, and then they do start hormones. The bleeding can be from hormones in the first 4 to 6 months. And that is not anything to worry about. If it happens past that, we do a workup with like ultrasound just to make sure the endometrium isn't thickened and things like that. But it can be kind of alarming for people who haven't had a period and all of a sudden they start hormones and they're like, look at that. And so I just say, reach out to us, let us know how it's going. We wouldn't want it to be heavy, but sometimes it's just like a 5 to 7 day, episode of bleeding and your body's just kind of, I think Mary Claire is something about the tissue wakes back up again and you can have that bleeding. But it is tricky when you haven't quite gone a year. So we just have to keep an eye on those type of things. So,
Yeah.
I always thought, I can't wait till the day that I don't have a period, but there's something to be said about that monthly, just getting everything
Shedding.
out, the shedding, like, so I wish I wouldn't have wished it away for so long because there's a lot of good things about a cycle.
Well, my mom started going through menopause at age 32. And it was horrific for her. And she did not do more hormone HRT because she would get cervical cells is what they had called it. And so again, back in the day, they were afraid that it would cause cancer. And she suffered. She was a completely different person for about a good 8 to 10 years. Horrible. And it's like, my goodness, that why would you want to suffer like that? Why would you want to suffer
So
like
what
that?
is something she could have done differently? That
well, if there would have been more research on HRT, maybe she could have done that. You know what I mean?
What would that have been? What year would that have been, Tricia?
Oh goodness. Well, 93, I think is what it was, and then on up. And she would have horrible periods. There were two separate times where she had actually ended up in the hospital because it was just, horrible.
Yeah, the migraines started for me at like 38.
Yeah.
And I would get them each month with my period.
Yeah.
For like 3 days.
Oh yeah.
So that has been my favorite thing about not having a period. Those migraines have gone away.
Yeah. Yeah, but she would go through these horrible angry episodes and oh my God. Thank God my dad stuck it out with her.
So what advice would you give men for women in their life that are going through?
Well, it's definitely
Therapy.
hard. Hopefully, just patience, I think. And just, each relationship has their own, flow, if you will. And just maybe just understanding that, give her grace, just because like she might react to something, more so than what she would, or be snappy or just not herself.
Yeah.
And while it might not be depression, definitely depression and anxiety can be magnified during perimenopause and menopause. If you've had a history of previous depression and anxiety diagnosed, right, it can be aggravated.
Yeah.
But just kind of grace. I think the biggest thing for men is probably to the decreased libido for women because they don't feel good, and just the mood irregularity and, just being crabby. And if you don't sleep and you're hot, you're crabby,
Yeah.
I could speak to that fairly recently, actually. So
Yeah.
my husband probably can too, but I think just, realizing that what's coming out of her mouth at this moment might not be, and I think it's hard when you have kids because you don't want to, hurt the kids' feelings and that type of thing. And, I'm not generally a reactive person with people, but I have been a little bit lately, but I think they kind of, get it, but it's just really hard, but supportive grace, that type of stuff for partners of people that are going through it.
Well, I have 19 kids that work for me. And Lisa has had to say to them sometimes, you have to show Tricia grace. Because this is not an easy time going through menopause and then everything else that you have going on. And, it will be you someday.
Yeah.
It will be you someday. But I like the idea of you said, give it an hour.
Yeah, I think,
it an hour.
Like I said, I go Mach 10 for an hour solid, and I know it. I've identified it. I identified it a long time ago.
Yeah.
So I try not to make any rash decisions or purchase anything in that moment.
Exactly.
Set a timer.
Yep.
Come back.
Revisit. Just give it a day, and then see how it is.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. It's like an out-of-body experience.
It's just that your coping skills are gone. I feel like we all kind of lost a chunk of our coping skills in COVID.
Oh yeah,
that disappeared.
Yeah.
And you don't want to blame everything on COVID, but it's changed so much anxiety.
Gosh,
Well,
yes.
I feel like we're
people.
experiencing a lot of PTSD from that whole event.
Yeah, I just think it's been very sneaky on how it shows up and surfaces and things like that. I think the poor kids that were in certain phases of their schooling, suffered more than others. Some kids are just like whatever, and then other kids are just really affected by things. And it all depends on your personality too. But I think we're all just thinking we're all gonna go worst case scenario from the get go. We're not able to logically walk through a problem or something that happens to you. And so, like I said, I just go, okay, Maggie, let's have a self talk. Don't be weird or buy anything,
And
don't go online at Amazon.
the other thing to remember is, I don't know if this works in all email brands or whatever, but you can schedule send an email. So you can write it.
Yeah.
And you can schedule it for maybe 5 hours later. And in between that time, you have a chance to delete it.
Yeah. Well,
instead of just sending it.
Exactly.
Just delay
just
sending
like,
the email.
just waiting on everything too. And just being like,
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed.
So we don't want to use menopause as an excuse for bad behavior.
No.
Or maybe we do. I don't know.
Criminal activity, I would say.
Criminal activity.
Criminal activity. Define criminal.
Would that stand up in court? I'm sorry, Your Honor. I'm going through menopause. And
there are actually, they talked to the menopause conference about how they're wanting workplaces to have resources for people going through menopause because of the billions of dollars that are lost because of the symptoms of menopause and how people stay home or are just not productive because they're having these things. So I feel like that's going to come. We're a little bit late to the game usually in the US, but I think that's going to be more like workplaces are going to be offering. I don't know if there's going to be like cooling rooms. I mean, who knows what they'll offer, or just grace, like if people are having a bad day, that type of thing. But
I mean, you hear these stories of these women giving these very, very, very important presentations
and having a hot flash
happening in the middle of it. And
oh gosh,
how embarrassing it can be.
Well, and then, I mean, it's just, and then your brain, like, because you're what you probably appear to be. So then your brain isn't what it should be. So I think that we're going to see a huge push towards, education and acceptance, and people are going to be more open to doing hormones and not so scared of it.
Yeah.
And just knowing what their risk factors are and then trying to take care of yourself. Self-care. We all need to probably be active, build our muscles up and make better food choices too, which is going to help all that stuff too.
I need to start carrying more hot girl pearls at the salon. Literally.
Yeah. Have you seen these before? So the brand is called Hot Girl Pearls, and they're kind of Betty Rubble looking, and you keep them in the freezer. They're filled with a cooling gel.
Yeah,
and they come with a bracelet and a necklace. They're amazing.
That sounds good.
Yeah. I mean, and it doesn't have, at the salon, it doesn't have to be, this huge announcement. It could just be a card.
There you go.
Well, one of the things while my color's processing, she's like, I can put the hot pack on your thing. I'm like, is there a cold one?
Yeah.
She said yes. I'm like, bring it on.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So good.
Well, like you said, Maggie, there's going to definitely be more resources because women are going to demand it. They are, because they want to feel their best self.
We all do. That's what drives people. We want to feel better.
Yes, exactly. And for the men, they want their significant other to feel their best self also,
Exactly.
Because when mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Amen to that.
Right, Jason?
So what is your top advice for women 38 to 48 who are starting to notice some of these things? Aside from the obvious, like find someone in your area that specializes in menopause. What else? What advice would you give women that are like,
I would
I
would just have them make sure that they're educating themselves and doing what they can do. Like, I feel like we can all start with improving our diets and then moving more and prevention for physical, because our physical health is so important. And I feel like if you're doing all those things and then you're still having a lot of those hormonal, symptoms at the age of 38 and especially in the mid 40s, then definitely talk to either your family doctor. I think they're becoming more knowledgeable about either referring on or, talking about stuff. The nice part is a lot of people need birth control. So they take birth control pills, which does a great job in the perimenopausal phase of managing symptoms. But sometimes those symptoms start to break through, I'll see patients that have been on birth control and their symptoms are starting to break through. That can be a little tricky because then you're like, well, then maybe we need to, add that type of stuff. But I would just say, taking care of yourself first is so important. And it can be very hard, as you guys know, it can be very challenging just because sometimes you don't sleep good. Then you're going to sleep in and you're going to miss your workout. I'm just as guilty of these. And then maybe you're rushing around so you don't grab your meal prep. You end up getting Chick-fil-A or whatever. Nothing against Chick-fil-A, but and so it's just like, consciously making time for yourself and prioritizing your health. Because if you're healthy and you're taking care of yourself, then you'll be able to take better care of like your kids, who's probably your next concern. So.
Yeah, agree.
But don't be afraid to ask your healthcare person what's going on, and just education. There's so much great material and books out there that can make you feel better. And that you're not alone. I think people feel like sometimes they're all alone.
Oh my gosh.
And they're going crazy and they're developing anxiety disorder and you're not, you're just like, personally, I'm not an anxious person by nature, but every once in a while be like, oh God, I don't want to go to the grocery store. Well, where's that coming from? And then I'm like, wait, I have to do a lot of self-talk. Like you're going fairway, like it's fine. So, and that just comes out of nowhere where, and I don't know what that's from.
Is so true.
Is that hormonal? Is it post-pandemic stuff? Who knows? But yeah.
So true.
I almost want to like, if you can talk to yourself, like you would talk to a friend or a loved one, that can be helpful.
Yeah. Or like just stopping and being like, okay, what's this really about?
Yeah. Why am I anxious?
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Margarita.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, I'm so thrilled for that more people are talking about that.
Yes. And they will continue to, I think.
Yes, they will.
Because I think the generations before us just suffered silently and just were told, oh, it's just age and get over it. And so I'm glad that us badass Gen Xers are standing up and saying,
yeah,
there's got to be something we can do.
I agree.
So you're welcome, millennials and Gen Z.
And she means that with love.
I mean that with love. I do.
Hashtag love.
Hashtag love.
Hashtag love, yeah.
Oh,
all right.
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Your Sastastic Life is produced by Apex Creative. Go to apexcreative.vip. That's APEXX creative.vip.